Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life. What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to the 817 podcast, where we talk about trends, culture, news in the lovely city of Fort Worth. We are virtual today. Jimmy, what is up?
How's it going?
Good.
You've been out of town this week, holding things down for SSA, and it's been the weirdest, worst week in a while, I feel like. I feel like in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of opportunities to say, man, this is a terrible week. But literally, actually, this was a pretty miserable week across the board, both statewide, nationally, and internationally. First, if you're running the Countdown Marathon this weekend, congratulations on finishing. It's always such an awesome event. And if you made it out there to support the runners also, thanks for doing that. I know it means a lot to the people running, but congratulations to any listeners that went out and ran a marathon or a half marathon this weekend.
Yeah, you I thought you were getting into marathon shape based off of your loss of weight. I'm like, man, is this guy trying to run an Ironman or something, or compete?
No, I did a half marathon once in high school, and at about mile 10, I was like, I'm never doing this again.
Totally.
Literally, yeah. It would take a very large sum of money that someone paid me to run a marathon again.
Yeah. But man, I know this is a local base podcast, but we would be, just to really acknowledge the shenanigans and just the heartbreak in Ukraine, and then also I know Texas had a lot of things that we were dealing with as well. I mean, I was in Atlanta and Memphis for the last 10 days, and I was just thinking about not coming back. I was just like, hey, burn all the stuff in Texas and just get out of there. But
yeah, I mean, so let's start with Florida this week, their House passed their Don't Say Gay bill. Fortunately, I believe without the amendment that would require teachers to report non-straight students, but still just a disgusting thing for those lawmakers to be approaching, and a terrible thing for the state. It hasn't passed the Senate. I don't know the makeup of their Senate, but Florida's got a chance to vote out DeSantis and a lot of those guys. So hopefully they do that and can try and turn things around for the state. And then internationally, obviously, I never watch the news on TV, but this is one of those few times that you tune in to see what's happening. And Russia invading Ukraine, and man, those Ukrainians are badasses. This 40-something-year-old president who was a former comedian who people have just kind of been trashing on for a while as maybe not competent, or just a placeholder for the job. One, he defeated Putin's puppet in an election to get into office there in 2016. But two, him, all of his cabinet, the mayors of their major cities are all out there leading their troops on and just putting up an awesome fight. They've just been totally badass. But then also, it would be remiss to not say how important of a job Joe Biden has done over the last month and a half of using the intelligence that the US had gotten, putting it out there as public information, not just to the US, but to other world leaders, rallying NATO, which Trump had tried to weaken and remove the US from, so that literally the entire world, except basically China, is giving a big FU to Russia and is really going to cripple Putin in a lot of ways. So I personally fall on the side of, like, we don't need to engage militaristically until, like, a NATO country is attacked. Like, that's the way NATO works. But all that we've done with financial sanctions and getting troops to the borders of NATO countries and NATO nations getting supplies to Ukraine has been pretty epic, and I think put Russia in a really bad spot. Let's move it back to Texas, and this is the first major negative thing that happened this week, and that is that Greg Abbott wrote a letter to the Department of Family and Protective Services directing them to conduct a prompt and thorough investigation of any reported instances of using gender-affirming medical care or hormone treatments for transgender children as child abuse. This guy is disgusting. I've had a lot of very negative thoughts about Greg Abbott this week, and ones that I won't vocalize because they are so negative. Like, this is absolutely disgusting, where they are saying that if a parent affirms their transgender child and helps them or allows them access to gender affirming treatment or hormone treatments, that they should be reported for child abuse. Like, that is absolutely disgusting. And I'm going to take it a step further. I don't see what I'm going to say as alarmist. I see it as a very natural delineation, is that, like, what happens when parents are reported for child abuse? The child is taken away from them, right? Where's that child going to go? I would imagine with transgender children in Texas, that those children are going to go to some quote unquote re-education camp, and who knows what's going to happen to them there. So that's obviously like a step down the road, and I'm sure that this will have a lot of legal battles to face. But what an absolutely disgusting thing for him to do. And like, if you are transgender, non-binary, in Texas, in the US, across the world, or you have a child or family member that falls into those categories, like, you are so valued and welcome as a Texan American human being. And these people who continue to throw and spew hatred at you for no reason have no place in the leadership positions that they do. And it is up to us to get rid of them. It is up to us to make sure that they do not hold those positions any longer. And if you are a person from out of state who is saying, why don't they just move? Why don't they just leave Texas? More than 5 million Texans voted Democrat in the last election. That is more people than like 35 or 37 of the United States. Like, your reaction should be, how can I get to Texas to continue to swing the vote the other way? How can I continue to support the people that are there and make sure they have access to the care and protection that they need? So I am very much so hoping that this gets, struck down in some level of court. I'm not super optimistic about that, given the makeup of the Supreme Court and the Texas higher courts right now. But it was just a really sad day to live in Texas, seeing this unprompted act of evil come out.
Yeah. I know something we didn't mention as well around, I guess now looking for a new governor. Beto O'Rourke, the Democratic candidate, is spending election night March 1st in none other than Fort Worth. So I think to me, I feel like these kind of crazy outlandish ideas by Governor Abbott, to me, has a silver lining of firing up the other side, Democrats who may have felt like, Beto doesn't have a chance. Mm-hmm. And to me, you used to be on this podcast very sounding unhopeful. And I just feel like you just gave this like amazing, Jimmy for governor speech of how we can turn Texas blue. I feel like we've been very not about that. And it seems like capturing this moment to show the true hate is getting out of hand, on top of all the things that already happened with the abortion stuff and the spikes of people having to go online and out of the state to get the resources they need as Texans. Now you add on this. So are you saying that you believe that we as Democratic Tarrant Countyans should really step up our game?
Yeah, I mean, if I was on the fence for this primary of if I was going to vote on the Republican or Democratic ballot, I am definitely on Tuesday going to vote on the Republican ballot so that I can go and vote against all these assholes as many times as possible. Like, these people have no business being in office. I don't care. Like, Don Huffines is running on eliminating property taxes. He, in a general election, like, he could never actually get elected because he would literally bankrupt the state. In a primary, like, there's enough crazy far right people that might get him to beat out Abbott. Like, I'll join that crew because I think Beto's got a better chance of beating him than Greg. But like, if you are a Democrat in Texas and you are not planning on voting in this primary or in this gubernatorial election come November, like, you are failing so many kids and minorities in Texas who do not have a vote or do not have a say or the protection that they need and deserve as human beings. And like, we've got to go all out for this. And so I think like Abbott's probably doing this to try and like fire up his base of like, look what I'm willing to do. But like, this needs to get Democrats so mobilized, because if not, like, within a couple of years, like, Texas is not going to be a safe place to live for a lot of gender nonconforming people.
Yeah. Jimmy, I really think you have some of the best empathy in the world. I just want to let you know, every time I watch you speak about the right things, it's beautiful, my man. I just want you to know.
I appreciate it. I don't have any empathy for far right crazies, but other than that, I can I can be empathetic for a lot of things.
Yeah. It's remarkable, my friend. And we're pretty deep in the show already, by the way, good sir. And we only hit
Yeah, we're like 20 minutes in. Whoops.
So we're gonna
Let's fly through
city
a couple
council. Let's hit
things.
city council. And the other short story we're going to discuss was the roads. So we will, well, not roads, but how long do people stay on roads when driving to work? So you want to hit the city council one?
Yeah. So a nearly empty room heard the Fort Worth City Council devolve into nearly 3 more hours of bickering Tuesday, resulting in an impasse that forced the council to advance 2 new council maps for consideration instead of one. So we already last week were talking about how the council is doing the exact opposite of what this process is supposed to look like and trying to get all their hands and fingers all over the map that was selected by the independent redistricting committee. So they spent like 4 hours last week doing it, didn't come up with a map. Now they spent 3 hours this week doing the same thing, still not coming up with a map, still not putting forward map X that was selected by the redistricting committee. And it's just a big smudge on, like, I would say the legacy of the current city council, especially given how excited people were about all of the turnover in council and a really young new city council coming. So I think that this has just been made a poor situation. I think it goes to show why Ann Zeta was so passionate about doing this completely independent of the city council. And it just continues to look worse and worse. So now there will only be one meeting for public comment on the maps. It'll be this coming Thursday. And I don't, one, like, Cary Moon is all up in this process. Cary Moon is not like a real city council member anymore for all intents and purposes. Like, that's another reason I'm voting on the Republican primary is we need Cary Moon to win that primary so that he is fully out of Fort Worth City Council and like cannot run again for that position in the special election over the summer. Because he's got his fingers all in this, and it's like, dude, like, this is not your battle anymore. Like, this is time to take a back seat and leave it to the people who this will continue to impact on the council. So Carlos Flores created a map. His version was very similar to map X, and it was dropped from consideration. So now we've like totally thrown out the map from the independent committee, essentially. Just like, what a terrible situation. And this just does not reflect well on the current city council, in my opinion.
Yeah, Moon's map is looking at it's looking to create a second district in North Fort Worth. It does not create a second district with Hispanic majority. So, yeah, that would be bad as well. Nettles map was supported by Beck. The new District 11 in his map. Yeah, this has just became a real debacle. And I mean, I know the Thursday meeting, you're going to be out of town. How serious? Like, do you know people going? And do you know, like is Emily Ferris going, or anybody you know, like, really standing up to this stuff? Or do you feel like everyone who cares about this? I know there was a huge task force and team, which included Kent Bradshaw, I believe, one of the fans of the pod who came on our year show. And so I feel like
I don't
this is
know.
so under the radar due to all the international news, the state news, and maybe that's the other thing is Governor Abbott just trying to be crazy and do like a magic show? So we're all focused over here, and then while all these city councils are rechanging maps, we're not all really spinning our local news into this stuff.
Yeah, I imagine that a lot of the people who were behind Map X and the independent redistricting committee will show up to voice their opinion. Honestly, like, are the city councilors going to actually be listening and hearing these people? I don't know. I do think it's really interesting that like Beck is supporting Nettles' map and Beck is criticizing Flores, even though Flores is putting forth the map that's closest to the independent committee. Parker seems to support Flores. Moon's out there, and Firestone like kind of supports his map, and it just feels like everybody is all over the place. So I don't know. I assume that the people that will be there on Thursday to comment are ones that have been following this process the whole time and are probably very frustrated that the maps originally put forth are not the ones actually being considered at this point, which is what people have voiced the whole way as a concern of theirs. And it has very obviously come to fruition.
So here's what I think we should do on the Fort Worth pod, on the description, is have our Tuesday voting how we're going to vote. Because I love your strategy. And the crazy thing about it, I don't think it's talked about enough. Voting for Cary Moon, the idea that we would go vote for Cary Moon is so brilliant. I don't know who else has thought of those things, but I just feel like we need a game plan of we're all going to this place, we're voting Republican, and we're voting this way. And then on Thursday, we just need to have the link of the time where it's at for people can know to try to make it. I know you're out of town, but it seems like something, people should try to make.
Yeah, it's definitely something
where
people's voices need to be heard. Because it seems very apparent that they're not. And the council is kind of just in this echo chamber of doing their own thing. So I would say inundate them with voices asking for the transparency that was promised in this process. Let's hop over to some road conversations. According to a study from location tech company TomTom, local drivers in 2021 lost 67 hours in rush hour. Here's how much time was lost on each of Tarrant County's most congested roadways in 2020. I-35 West from Northeast 28th Street to I-30, 1.1 million hours. 35 West from Texas 170 to 287, 861,000 hours. 35 West from 287 to 28th, 959,000 hours. Airport Freeway from Texas 26 to Northeast 820, over a million hours. Our road situation total 6.3 million lost hours in 2020, a year when like nobody was going to the office. Like literally when everybody was staying home, North Texans, Fort Worthians still lost 6.3 million hours on the roads in 2020. Like, it is insane how bad our road situation is. And it is literal insanity, the actual definition of insanity, to continue just trying to build roads and not find other solutions, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, they said right off the top we could travel to the moon with all the time and hours spent in traffic. So
that's crazy. And it kind of leads us into some of the bigger economic development points we want to hit for today. Last week, we talked a lot about what Fort Worth is not doing. And this week, we're kind of going to get into the plans that still kind of show what we're not doing. So the 2022 Economic Development Strategic Plan update is now online. It was released this week, and they described it as bold and innovative, but it kind of just continues doubling down on what Fort Worth is already doing. I will say that they recognize the gap in deal closing money that we highlighted last week, that only $2 million a year from Fort Worth is going towards attracting companies, and that we lag significantly behind the rest of the Metroplex in that. But when they talk about Initiative 2 and real estate development, they're talking about expanding the convention center, which we knew about, building more office space, and building more roads. Like, this is literally the exact opposite of what you would expect a modern city to be doing. Like, office space is not the future. Like, we have seen, like, we do not need to continue trying to prop up the commercial real estate office space industry. We definitely don't need to be doubling down on it and building like 1 million square feet of it. And we definitely don't need to just be focused on building more and more roads, because that doesn't get us anywhere when we're not investing in alternative modes of transportation. So like, this came out this week and I just laughed. I was like, why we're just,
we're building
innovative.
offices. We're building offices that we don't want to be at and driving to them when we don't want to be on the road.
We don't want to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just always crack up when the real estate people on Twitter be like, man, everybody's so pumped to be back to office. And I'm just like, I hope you are not like this is, I hope this is, you're realizing this could be your JCPenney blockbuster moment and you're really holding on to
your Kmart.
Yeah. It's just,
and it's like, clearly you don't spend any time on TikTok or like younger forms of social media that are very much so all in on not going back to the office and helping their peers figure out how to not go back to the office.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, it talks about inclusive talent attraction and retention, and like, that's just not going to happen if these are the priorities. Like, I don't know very many young people who are excited about moving to a place with overpriced rents compared to median income, having to drive 25 to 30 minutes in a car to go into their office every day or multiple days of the week. It's just not.
This is not a you build this and they come, because we've already built and no one's coming. Statistically, no one has showed up, like, from businesses.
And I'm honestly, like, I'm not against expanding the convention center and redoing the convention center. Like, if that's going to bring people to the city and like give us capacity for larger events, like, that's great. Like, let's, I don't think that is a bad piece of this, but calling that dynamic and innovative, it's just doubling down on what we already do, which is try and prop up downtown with these conventions that are bringing people to those hotels and businesses.
One of the things I'm thinking about the convention center, we actually do a great job for how old our convention center is, getting a lot of like cool stuff. Like, you remember when we got the Comic Con? But I was wondering, like, my thought was we were getting these things because we probably offer the best price in the Metroplex compared to Dallas. Like, our convention center is more cost affordable. So my fear is that if we do upgrade the convention center, and now like we still are going to have to. I'm assuming we were doing that because we knew our amenities and infrastructure was not as nice as other convention centers. It'd be interesting to see if it boosts the level of people who come in, because we still provide a competitive price. But that's something I was thinking about.
That is interesting. I hadn't thought about it in those terms because I don't know the cost
Yeah.
of it. But I would imagine that there's probably some that does play a role in what we're getting. But
Yeah,
I
because you
think
remember when like BTS came to the convention center? I knew they had to be so confused. They're like, "Where the heck am I?
Yeah.
This is Dusty Bowl." You know. um,
But
yeah,
that does also lead into talking about we've talked about Airbnb before and how Fort Worth is not an Airbnb friendly city, and we stick our heads in the ground when it comes to, trying to actually do something about it. And they have actually been cracking down more and more on short-term rentals in the past like month and a half. Back from when we hosted, like I'm still in a group with short-term rental owners, and it's a lot of the like long tenured home renters that are getting cracked down on. So they are organizing a group and petition to go to city council on this Tuesday and try to actually have a conversation about this. We can link the petition in the show notes. But like Fort Worth has to take their head out of the sand with this. We can't just keep trying to prop up the downtown hotels. And if we're actually serious about bringing larger conventions here, we need places for those people to stay. So,
and also
Fort
their
Worth,
preferred choice of staying. It's not even.
right,
It's not even like everyone's gonna want to stay in an Airbnb, not stay
right,
in hotels.
right. Like
Like
it's
right now, I got friends in Airbnbs right now in Fort Worth. It's like dated.
and
That's
like we're propping up
for the marathon.
national we're propping up national investment dollars and not local money. So when you bring these conventions in and you're sticking them all in hotels owned by chain companies that aren't local to Fort Worth, the economic impact of those conventions is significantly less than advertised because that money is not staying here in Fort Worth. We might be getting some tax dollars from it, but we could be getting significantly more if more of that money was going towards locals hosting Airbnbs, and then also getting an occupancy tax on those Airbnbs. Like it's just so hilarious how poorly Fort Worth has managed short-term rentals. It's predictable based on how we manage anything that is innovative. But if we're actually serious about increasing the capacity of our convention centers, we need to have this conversation and make meaningful change around how we manage short-term home rentals.
Yeah. Man, we really never know what's going to happen on the pod. I feel like we always leave the pod seeing where it's going. But I might say this could be our most important pod from where there's actual directions and steps that need to be taken. Like, I feel like I'm still blown away. Like, I feel like the title of this podcast needs to be "We are voting for Cary Moon." Like, that just needs what it's to say because I'm still blown away from that discussion.
People we don't want around, like we have to figure out any way to make sure they're not around anymore. And so it's like, yeah, I don't want. As soon as I saw, maybe Harrison tweeted something that like Bud Kennedy confirmed that if Cary Moon lost the primary, he could run again in the election this summer. After that, I was just like, okay, well then Cary Moon has to win the primary. Like, I don't care if I have to vote for him to do that. Like, he needs to win the primary so that we don't have to deal with him anymore. And like, if Don Huffine somehow won the primary, like, I think that's a cakewalk for Beto to beat, because literally, like, people can't vote for somebody who's going to bankrupt the state, like remove our only source of tax revenue. And all these people, like Ken Paxton needs to get out, and Dan Patrick needs to get out. Like, all these people we just got to get rid of.
Then you have city council meeting on Thursday. Now you're talking Airbnb is going to be there on Tuesday. I mean, like these are very actionable, very important things going on in Fort Worth this week. So it's just wild. And you were talking about downtowns and just economic development. Is it, like, as much as I love skylines and I love downtowns, is it just safe to say that the idea of creating downtowns are just also outdated and old? Because, like, the only thing that can live in a downtown is a hotel. Like, it's kind of like if you Airbnb, if you turn one of those buildings into an Airbnb, then you just have a hotel. So it's like, I think so I just think, like, is the challenge that all these beautiful buildings and love seeing our skyline, the only economic way to keep them alive is office space and hotels, and both of those things are on the path to Kmart.
I would say no, because I think I've been to a lot of cities that actually use their old architecture and old buildings in ways that benefit everyday people living there and tourists. Like, you walk around Savannah, you walk around Toronto, Boston, Chicago, like,
but it'd be
Sydney,
good. But it'd be
Australia.
Good. But it'd be good to see what percentage of that of those spaces are still business and hotel. That actually be a good pool to see across cities. Like, what percentage of their downtowns is businesses, hotels, people live there, and then, like, activities for locals and tourists.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it is like restaurants and storefronts and creating like dynamic mixed use areas out of their old spaces.
What are you doing on floor 34? You know, like, I think that works on floor.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, like, a lot of that's not necessary. I'm sure is probably office space or residential, but like the first couple floors being used more as for small business and more residential. Like, we don't have very much residential in like the downtown of Fort Worth, and because of that, like, all those businesses rely on conventions and office workers to stay afloat, and so we kind of lose that, like, potential bodega style, like, neighborhood corner store type of environment, because people just aren't going and walking around.
Yeah.
The city
would benefit so much from so much with lower rent. Like, if you can somehow create lower rent in downtown, you then have people living there. They would eat around there. They would do things around there. I'm so over these, like, big, like, the way you talk about hotels is the way I'm talking about these big real estate companies who just overinflate pricing like no one's business.
Billionaires don't become billionaires by being generous.
Yeah. So it's just like, so yeah, one good thing though, we could talk about the Techstars, right? One good thing we could talk about is economic development. New business accelerator aims to put Fort Worth on the physical health industry map. And also exciting things. We're actually looking to have Robert Stearns back on the pod. His office did reach out and said, we would love to have Robert to talk more about these initiatives. And why are they exciting? Because I think me and you are seeing, okay, like, I think the recruitment of businesses sound interesting, but what does that look like? So anyways, we there is a path where we are having those dates, possibly early April. And then we're also, this Techstars one, we're looking to have someone on the pod for that. So the Fort Worth Techstars Physical Health Accelerator will recruit up to 10 up-and-coming businesses from around the country to move to Fort Worth for 3 months. And I'm wondering why not the world, but to develop and pitch their ideas to investors like venture capitalists, angel investors, and foundations. The program was announced February 22nd at City Council as the city aims to beef up its economic development plan to attract more businesses to town. So the accelerator is funded by $4.8 million of American Rescue Act funds from the city and country and county, and about $10 million from real estate investment firm Goff Capital, the University of North Texas Health Science Center at Fort Worth over a 3-year period, which is not that much money in my opinion. This is a very $10 million over 3 years, 4.8. You're looking at $5 million over 3 years to manage this this setup. But the idea here is, Cameron Cushman was honestly probably one of the biggest leaders on something like this, and really was able to put this on. And his kind of vision was, hey, if you go to the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic for cancer, how do you come to Houston for cancer, and then you go to Cleveland or the Mayo Clinic for heart issues? Why can't Fort Worth be the place to go for physical therapy? So obviously there's probably a lot of ties to the UNT Health Science Center as well. Honestly, we knew this was coming. We heard this was going to be announced. Trey Boyles is from Dallas, has done a lot in Dallas around entrepreneurship. The founder of the Deck, I believe, which is like a WeWork, but a Dallas version, or I believe he's the founder. If not, he was just a manager and leader of that as well. And when I started my company, he was one of the first people I pitched and talked to. So definitely he's a real person in the game. And what is your take, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think this is awesome. Like, physical therapy is a massive industry. And if Fort Worth can try and take the step forward to say, like, we are going to be the hub for physical therapy, which honestly, like, I think we're along a further way down that road than people might know, especially when it comes to athletics. Like, we have a lot of top doctors and technology in the area where athletes, when they're on the road playing a game against a Dallas-based team, like, they make sure to get time to get appointments with people here in North Texas. And so adding something like this that can continue to spur new technology in the area is a great thing. And shout out to Cameron for doing a lot to make this happen in the city and out of UNT Health Science Center. Because I think this is, from the research that we were doing about Techstars, this feels more specific than Techstars in a lot of other cities, where it's just like Techstars Atlanta, Techstars Berlin, but this is Techstars Fort Worth physical therapy. And so, like, we're really zoning in on that niche to try and attract talent to.
And I like that, and we were talking about how we like that strategy because, it's easy to sell Berlin or Austin and, like, be more generic, but businesses will move for very strategic things. And so we're niching down and go and say, hey, we're going to focus here. I can't imagine if you're a physical health company, you would want to do anything else right now if you're just starting out. So really cool strategy and really excited about it. One thing that I think is interesting, and I've always talked to people about this idea, and it's like, why? It's more of a why don't we do it? So you know how, like, college, universities, and endowments really are responsible for creating venture capital. I mean, like, it's something crazy, like how 20% of, like, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and all these companies are owned by universities who invested in through being LPs to venture capitalists, and now their endowments are through the roof. And I was always wondering, like, why does governments not have a venture capital firm that actually invests in these things as well, to then, like, you take tax dollars and then you are able to create more wealth for the city. So I just know that that's not happening with this $4.6 million of CARES Act fund, American Rescue Plan funds that we're putting in. But it would have been hella dope if Fort Worth had equity now into these companies, because we did that. And then, imagine, so, you put that equity into those companies. I think Techstars takes like 7%. But what if the city of Fort Worth got 1% of these companies? And if one of these companies sell for $100 million, there's $1 million that we added as profit. That's not property taxes. That's not any of these other things. And I've always thought, like, our government should have venture capital, like colleges have successfully done with their endowment. And it's just mind blowing that we don't participate.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of like potential corruption in that.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is why it's not a thing. But like, I think that's kind of what the pitch for the city to this is, like, we're bringing people, new businesses to the area. And so we reap the tax dollar.
And we
benefit.
currently do it. We currently do it with corporations, like where the building of Sons of Liberty was owned by the city. And,
right.
And then, they made profit off that building,
Yeah.
So they do make business decisions to make profit as cities already. They're just, again, doing old ways of business to do so.
Yeah. Well, like, that's an exciting thing in economic development, as we've kind of railed on it the last couple of weeks. You ready to move into wins and losses?
Let's do it.
All right. I'll start with my loss, and it's like a half loss, half win, more just a frustration to me. But Benbrook, as it is growing so much, will get a new school building out of the $1.2 billion bond, even though 59% of area residents voted against it. And just seeing this, like, it frustrated me. It's frustrating when we see Republicans around the country that voted against the infrastructure bill, like Kay Granger, trying to take credit for getting funding for something like Panther Island or other projects. And I'm not saying that I do not believe that you should only benefit from something if you voted for it. But I do think that, like, there has to be some sort of change of behavior for these people that continue to vote against good things happening across the city, but then just get to reap the benefits of it anyways. Like, the school physically cannot continue to hold the number of students that it has. It cannot sustain the growth that it has. It, like, literally has to have a new building built. Like, there's no way around that for Benbrook. Yet all these people went to the polls and voted against it. I'm saying, like, I don't know, at what point do you say, like, hey, like, you've got to hit your bursting point and figure it out to see why this was needed, as opposed to just kind of getting to kick and scream like a toddler, but then get your way anyways. So that was just a frustrating thing to me. It's obviously a good thing that a new building is being built, even though it is out of Fort Worth ISD, or in Fort Worth ISD, but it's in Benbrook. Yeah, I mean, I just, it is a pet peeve when people take credit for or benefit from things that they actively work against.
Yeah. My loss is on the same kind of path. Voting turnout is expected to be at 7%. So again, poor voter turnout in Fort Worth. Be there March 1st. Be there Tuesday. Make it happen.
Yeah.
Vote for
It's
Cary
wild.
Moon.
Like, like it's wild that, I mean, we're not obviously electing a governor this time, but we're doing a lot towards electing the highest leaders of our state. And just like nobody knows that it's going on, and nobody cares to show up. And that's why, like we said, come May, when we're voting about city council races and other things, like 1-2% of people are going to show up to that. And there's just a lot of like local and statewide things that people complain about, but then don't use their voice when they have the opportunity to, which is on them, but also on our leaders for not engaging well enough with people to get them informed and get them out to vote.
Yeah.
What's your win?
I'll save my win to the end, so you can go, and then I'll do my last.
My win. I mentioned last week how we joined Fort Worth's composting program recently, but now using a federal grant, Fort Worth seeks to triple the number of residents composting food scraps. Since 2019, 1,600 people have signed up to collect food waste through Fort Worth's residential composting program. This year, they'll be increasing the number of drop sites, and through a grant by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we will be able to increase focus on that. It's estimated right now that about 30% of all waste headed to our landfill could be composted instead. Honestly, we love it. We dropped ours off yesterday. We pre-composting, I would say we took out our trash like 2 times a week. Now I would say we're looking at like less than once a week. So like it's had a major impact on the amount of waste that we're producing. It's something that's really easy to get our kid involved in, and is a big win for the city and the longevity of our landfill and our waste, getting rid of our waste. So I thought that was a big win for us.
Huge. Yeah, huge. Easy to sign up.
Yeah, super easy to sign up. We're hoping that in this increase in drop zones that they'll put one over here in Meadowbrook on the east side. Right now we have to go to Magnolia area to do it. But we'd love if one of those was posted up at like the historic Southside Community Center, or maybe even Coffee Folk in the old fire station pottery, or Oakland Lake Park. So we're hoping that one of the 6 or 7 new locations is over here, but super easy to sign up. You just go pick up your buckets, and they give you instructions on how to drop your waste.
Yeah. Well, my win was that this was just a good episode. I wanted to keep it short. I was going to do the win. I was like, 4 times so we can keep it under an hour. I was going to be like, this is a great show. Jimmy, I am thankful for your ideas. I was super impressed with your ideas today. So today, the win is you, my man. I feel like if you were listening, I learned a lot from Jimmy today. So just keep being you, man. And yeah, I feel like there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's a big week. Make sure if you haven't early voted, go out and vote by Tuesday. Sign the petition to help support our short-term home rental people. Help voice your support come Thursday with redistricting. And yeah, we're excited for the next couple of weeks. Next week, we'll have a normal episode. The week after, we're still recording live at South by Southwest. We didn't get uninvited, for anybody wondering. At least not yet still.
Yeah.
So we'll be there, and we're excited to do that.
Awesome, man. Well, enjoy Disney World and see you soon.
Yeah, you too.
Follow us, likes, double tap. Now they control your life, control your life. Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Follow us like double tap. Now they control your life, control your life.